Hello and welcome to this video on measuring development. So in this video we're going to look at how economists measure economic development. But what do we mean by this term? What do we mean by development? Well, it's got a tricky one to nail down. It means many things to many people. And fundamentally we're talking about how economies develop over time. The Nobel economist Amartya Sen, pictured here, has seen development as concerned with improving the freedoms and the capabilities of the disadvantaged, thereby enhancing the overall quality of life. He views the idea that human development provides an opportunity for people to free themselves from suffering caused by early death, persecution and intolerance, starvation and illiteracy. And so development is trying to encompass these things. We're going to look at how we might measure economic development. We might say that these are common characteristics of developing countries. So they lead us kind of down the road of what we're talking about. So relatively low incomes, lower levels of productivity, high dependence on exports, a large share of the population living in rural areas, limited scope and support provided by the government's welfare system, a large informal sector, so lots of economic activity going on which the government don't know about, a low technology economy, relatively fast growth of population and a young average age, rapid urbanization, weaknesses in infrastructure, weaknesses in institutions, often protectionist measures, and tendencies to have a lot of capital controls. And finally, lower access to the global trading system, lower access to rich country markets. There's an important distinction here between economic growth and economic development. So economic growth, we're really just talking about productive capacity of a country as we would measure by GDP or GNI per capita. Economic development's a little bit more broad than that. We're talking about progress in expanding economic freedom, sustained improvement in economic and social opportunities, the growth in personal and national capabilities. Now there's obviously a close link between economic growth and development. Lifting per capita incomes can raise people out of extreme poverty. It can give households greater and businesses greater financial resources to save. It can create new jobs, providing a flow of income for people in work. Higher incomes, economic growth can also reduce income and wealth inequality if the lowest earners in society are benefiting from the growth. Faster economic growth can generate higher profits which can be reinvested, promoting increased productivity and capacity. Through economic growth, countries may shift away from more agricultural-based products to manufacturing and tertiary sectors. Economic growth can generate higher tax revenue for the government, who can then provide more welfare state and essential public services. Now, quite a common way in which we would measure development is by looking at the Human Development Index. The Human Development Index combines three indices: the life expectancy at birth, the mean years of schooling and expected years of schooling, and then GNI per capita on a PPP basis. And these are designed to measure how healthy the life is, how good the education is, and whether they have a decent standard of material possessions. We get an average score here that is somewhere between 0 and 1, 1 being the highest and 0 being the lowest. And in this table here we can see some of the usual suspects who come near the top of the HDI rankings. An inequality adjusted HDI is the same, but here we also make an adjustment for the inequality of the distribution of income within a country. So if it's a very unequal distribution of income, this will bring down our HDI ranking. So for example, the global average of 0.682, when we adjust for inequality of incomes, this drops to 0.525 for the global average. And here we can see the inequality adjusted HDI value plotted against the Human Development Index, the normal HDI value. And generally speaking, we can see that a number of countries score slightly lower on the inequality adjusted index than Human Development Index. So for example, Angola, Botswana, Chile, Korea, United States, these countries being slightly lower on the inequality adjusted would suggest that income inequality is an issue for these countries. There are a whole range of other measures we might look at in order to measure development. We might look at the structure of output, trade and employment. Do they trade a lot? What sort of goods are they trading in? Do they add value? We can look at the extreme poverty levels. We can look at the percentage of male and female workers in agriculture. We can look at the primary, secondary school enrollment figures, access to clean water, how much energy are consumed, fertility rates. We can look at disease, access to mobile phones, bank account services, these sorts of things. We can look at how much they depend on foreign aid, whether there's welfare programs in place, unemployment rates, high technology exports, whether they depend purely on primary products to sell their goods or for their exports. We can look at changes in the pattern of the HDI. We can look at other indices that have many more dimensions that measure poverty. We can look at whether countries are making progress in meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So in this video, we've looked at the main ways in which economists measure development and the nature of what we mean by economic development itself. That's it. Thanks very much for listening.